Welcome to Viewpoints. I'm Heather Isvaron, and with me today is William Crosbie, Chief Operating Officer for Amtrak. Welcome, William.
Thank you, Heather. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Today we're going to talk about the railroads, and just had a few questions for you. Number one, over the last 8 years, we've seen so much in the way, in the news, in the way of airline security and how the industry is really making changes and evolving. Can you give us an idea of how the railroad industry is securing the homeland?
Certainly. I'll give you the Amtrak perspective. In the last, say, 18 months, we have taken a fresh look at how we do security at Amtrak. We have had a police force, a traditional police force, and we've added to that a special operations group to oversee our security strategy and our rail security strategy. And the types of things we're putting in place include our mobile team, which goes to stations, and they do what would be considered similar to airline type screening. It's not X-ray equipment, but baggage screening, where they would do a swab of your bag. It's done on a random basis. And we've also supplemented with some technology, CCTV, those types of things. And we continue to build our new K9 team as well. We've added to that. We've traditionally had a K9 team, but we've started to focus in on how it's deployed and adding to it the number of K9 units we have throughout the country.
And so those seem like things citizens and passengers would normally see over the last 18 months.
Yes, yeah, they've started to see that. In the last, the mobile team has been added in the last 3 months at Amtrak, and the K9 units, they'll see more of those. In the past, we had focused on the stations, and you'll see more on board. The K9, the dogs themselves, they have to be specially trained to be familiar with operating on a train. The movement of the train tends to can be an issue for them if they're not trained appropriately. So they'll see more K9 units on the train. They'll see more, a larger presence in the station. And we're doing some things behind the scenes as well that you won't necessarily see.
That's great. And so what would the strategic priorities be for Amtrak?
In terms of security and safety, we really do look at those two things as one item. People take Amtrak because it's a safe mode of transportation, and security is wrapped into that as well. So we look at it as one strategy from the beginning, from the moment they enter a station to the moment they board a train, through the transportation, and then leaving at their destination. So our priority is safe transportation. Some of our other priorities, which are not related, but they are indirectly related to security, include things like state of good repair, returning our systems to a state of good repair. And with that comes resiliency and redundancy, which is really critical if in the event of whether it's a terrorist attack or a weather event, those types of things. We rely on our systems, and we are ever improving them, returning them to a state of good repair, and adding in more redundancy. And then the last piece that is related to security is response and recovery. And we've put a heavy emphasis it's in line with the redundancy and resiliency on being able to respond and recover and get back into service as soon as possible.
And how are you working with the state and local agencies to partner with those priorities?
We travel through, we operate roughly 310 trains a day in the country, and we operate through 46 states, and we rely heavily on state resources. We do not have a police force in every one of those jurisdictions. So we rely on the police force, the emergency services, fire departments, and the like through all of those states to help us in the event, whatever the emergency might be, on board one of our trains. So we work very closely with our state and local partners to provide any services we might require as we service their town or city.
So the news story of the day, of course, are the rising costs of fuel and the fact that more folks are going to be taking public transportation. Strategically, how has Amtrak sought to accommodate the rising demand?
All of this always requires capital funding. Let's just start with that. I think we are in a good position because I think passenger rail has been a mode in the not too distant past that was really forgotten. And now with what is happening with the fuel prices and the airlines, people are remembering that there's also passenger rail as an option. And so we do have capacity, and where our capacity is becoming taxed, we are adding some extra capacity where we can, but a lot of it is dependent on capital funding, and we get our capital funding from the federal government. And we're working with Congress to increase that capital funding where it makes sense to improve the capacity that we have, for example, here on the West Coast and also along the East Coast, which is some of the two most heavily traveled corridors in the country. And to not only improve the capacity through additional trains, but also trip time and just the throughput of the passengers on board our service.
That's great. So thank you for being with us today. It's great to learn a little bit about Amtrak and what they're doing.
And thank you for inviting me.